Hello, my Wednesday morning group. How are you all? Okay, so in the last session we were looking at creating a spreadsheet that worked out our monthly bills for using the electricity. Now, the first thing we did, though, if you remember, was we tried to work out how much electricity I use per day on average. Okay, so for example, my yearly average, it says here, estimated annual consumption on my bill says 9,311 kilowatt hours. So that's the year. So what I can do is if I divide that, which is that symbol, if you remember, and then 365, number of days in a year, we come up with that figure. Okay, which is actually a little lower than the one that we'd actually worked out. So as I recall, it was 1096. So it was 1096. Oh, let me just delete that, sorry. So I'm typing equals 1096. That's how much electricity I used in 40 days. So I'm going to divide that by 40, and that will tell me how much electricity I used on average per day for those 40 days, which was 27.4. The next thing we did was we did a little calculation here, do you remember? Which is equals the amount a kilowatt hour costs, and then times, which is that symbol, and then 27.4. And that, if we press enter, will tell me how much it costs per day to use the electricity. But because I wanted to work out how much it was per month, what I've done is I simply get that same formula, but on the end I type in times by 30. So that gives me a month on average, 30 days, which gives me that figure. And again, the same with if I want to work out how much the standing charge is. So it's 18 pence. So I'm selecting that cell, 18 pence, and then I am timesing that by 30, and that will give us how much it costs just to have the electricity meter in the house, which is £5.40. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press equals so that we know a sum's coming up, and I'm going to click on that cell, and I'm going to click plus, and I'm going to click that cell, which will add those two together, and that's how much it's going to cost me. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So I'm going to type in equals, because to tell it we're doing a sum, the number of kilowatt hours by clicking on that cell, times by how much I use per day, which is at the top here. Okay, so that's my daily amount, and then I'm going to times that by 30, and that tells me on that tariff how much it would cost me. And if I look at this cell here, the standing charge, again I'm going to type in equals the standing charge, and I'm going to times that by 30, and I'm going to add those two together by equals the kilowatt hours plus the standing charge, gives me that figure. Okay, so I'm going to complete all of this for EDF now, and then we're going to go on to some of the formatting. So obviously these are the figures here for the rest of the suppliers, and we're going to work on that in the lesson on Wednesday. But for now, let's just finish off these. So equals that many kilowatt hours times by, sorry, that's kilowatt price times by that many kilowatt hours per day, and then times that by 30 days, and then equals that times by 30 days, and add those two together. Okay, so two more times equals how much a kilowatt hour costs times by the number of kilowatt hours I use in a day, and then times that by 30 to give me the month, and equals the standing charge times by 30, and add those two together. So equals that cell plus that cell. Oop. And for the final time for EDF, I'm going to do equals how much a kilowatt hour costs times by how many kilowatt hours I use in a day, and then times that by 30 days. And the standing charge is equals that times by 30, and simply add those two together by equals that cell plus that cell. Okay, so we can see that the standing charge, standard charge I should say, sorry, is the most expensive. Now, we want to make that slightly easier to read. So I think it helps if you put a box around it. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on that. So I'll come back to that in a second. So if we put a box around it, so I press in the first cell, which is A1, I hold down the Shift key, and then I go down to D16. Yeah, so I'm highlighting all the cells that are related to EDF. Every one of those now is highlighted, and I'm going to click on this drop down, and I'm going to click all the borders. Okay, yeah. So that now has a border around all of them. What I want to do though is I want to have this so that it's in the middle. Yeah. So it just says EDF at the top. So if I click on A1, hold down the Shift key and click on D1, I've highlighted all of those cells on that top line. I'm going to click Merge in Center. I'm not going to use the drop down box. I'm just going to click Merge in Center. So what that's going to do is that's going to get all those cells and make it look like one big cell, and put that word EDF in the middle. Okay, so watch as I do that. There you go, and you have EDF in the middle. So I'm going to show you that one more time. So I've highlighted all those cells, and I'm going to merge them into one big cell and put EDF in the middle. Okay, so it still could do with being easier to read, I think. So what we can do is we can click on this cell, which is the EDF, and if we do a right click, which I know we haven't done these before, but it's just simply a case of doing a right click as opposed to a left click, which is what we normally do. So if we right click, we can format those cells. So basically that's saying that this is what we want the cell to look like. Okay, now EDS logo is red with a white writing. So I'm going to change the font to bold so it stands out more, and the colour to white, and I'm going to change the fill, so that is what the colour of the actual cell is, not the writing but the cell, and I'm going to make that red. Okay, so when I click OK, that cell now looks like the EDF logo-ish. Okay, I'll do that one more time. So we're going to do a right click, just wait for my computer to work it out, and then we're going to go to Format Cells. Okay, so from that little drop down that comes Format Cells, background colour is going to be red, and the font, the actual writing, is going to be white, and I'm going to make it bold so it stands out a bit more. Okay, so that's our EDF one. Now, for example, The British Gas one is, I think it's blue. So if we were to change that, we would format the cells. And we can change the font to white again and bold. And then we can click on the fill. And we can make that blue. So let's choose that version of blue. I can't remember if it is blue or not. And then we just click on OK. And we've got the same effect. What I would like to do is also, can we see these different headings for the heating? Doesn't stand out enough for my liking. Okay, so we could do what we've done with the EDF. So we could highlight all those cells in that range for the actual range and merge and center it. Okay, I'm not too fond of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on that cell, for example A5 here, and I'm going to format the cell like we just done. And maybe, I don't know, what colours do you think? So I'm always a fan of this shade of blue. Okay, and we might keep the writing black, but we can make it bold. Okay. Don't know how easy that's going to be to read on screen. I don't think it's going to be particularly easy. Okay, but we can do the same for all the headings. Okay, so format cells. That blue, which is one of my favourites. Oh no, sorry, this is the writing, so we're going to have black. And then the fill is going to be that blue. Yep. And the same for flex control. So I'm going to right click on that. Format cells. The fill, I want to be that blue. And the font, I want to be bold. Same for the deemed. So you can see, obviously we're speeding up because we're getting used to it. Format cells, bold, fill, colour, blue. Standard variable rate, right click, format cells, the fill, that blue, the font, bold, click on OK. If we look, we can see that I've actually forgotten to make this top one bold. Yep. So all we need to do is right click on that cell, format the cells, on the font, just make it bold, and it will be bold. Okay, so what we might like to do is to make it stand out a bit more is if we highlight the rates, so we highlight those 4 cells, or sorry, those 8 cells, if you will, but those 2 lines of 4, and I'm going to format those cells. I'm going to make them bold, and then I'm going to choose a different colour. So I'm going to go back to the fill, but instead of that blue, which is this one, I'm going to make it this lighter blue. Okay? And that's what that looks like. And we could do that for all of these cells. So do that for them. Format cell, fill, and we chose that blue. Yep. And we made the font bold. Or what we could do is we could choose one row of just 4 cells and format the cells. Okay, so let's assume that I've made them bold, so I'm not going to say that anymore, but we're going to choose this top blue and click OK, and then the second line we're going to right click, format the cells and make it this blue underneath it, or perhaps that blue. Okay, so that then the different lines stand out. So it's up to you, whatever works for you. I'm actually thinking that I'm quite liking them all being the same blue with white above them. So I'm going to go to Format Cells, just make sure it's bold, the fill, and my little, it was that one, wasn't it? Okay, and the same for that. And I'm just going to make that line the same. Okay, so that's made it slightly easier to read. I don't know how you feel about that. That's up to you if you want to change those colours around. Okay. So that's where we were up to in the last lesson. So obviously what you're going to be doing is doing these ones, working out these ones, and we're going to, and then obviously making them easier to read. So let's just go through the sums again. Excuse me. This cell here was working out in 40 days I used 1096 kilowatt hours of energy. So if I divide 1096 by the 40 days, it gives me how much I use per day. Here I'm working out how much I use per day and how much that energy unit is. So there's the price per energy unit, and that's the times that by 27.4 because that's how many I use in a day. So how much and how many gives that total. The standing charge is just a constant number, so you just times that by 30 and that gives us this total. Okay, let's do the maths one more time. That gives me how much I use in a day. That's how much each unit costs. So I'm timesing that unit by that, and to give that figure for 30 days. Okay, make sure you have the times 30, because if you don't, all you get is how much you use in a day. Okay, so we're sticking on the end of that, times by 30 to give the monthly amount. So you can see I've done all these different calculations, and this is the advantage of using a spreadsheet. Now we've got 27.4 here, but let's say my kids have moved out, as we were discussing, and I'm only going to be using 15 kilowatt hours a day. So if I change it to 15, you can see it's worked out all the different figures for me. Okay, and maybe one of the children comes back, so I'm going to be using 21 kilowatt hours per day, and it's done all the calculations for us, so we don't have to. Okay, so let's give it back to 27.4, and again, maybe this unit changes, so it might be that instead of being 15.88 pence, it becomes 16.1, because they're always up in the prices, aren't they? So 16.1, oh, where's that gone wrong? 161, so that's 16 pence, 0.1 pence, and then that will calculate it for us. Okay, the reason it got confused then is because I put a point in there, and you can't have a number with 2 points in it. So my mistake. So 16.1, and that will calculate that for us. Maybe the standing charge also goes up to 19 pence, and that will affect both of these figures as well. Hopefully that will have reminded you of what we've done this lesson. We're going to finish this off, and then we're going to work on some other things, like how we're going to save that file, how we're going to put it on a USB pen, how we're going to email it to each other. So that is going to be the next 2 weeks. I'll look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.